What's up guys, welcome back to another video. We finally got some more RB content going on, so I know a lot of you will be very excited about this RB content going up and again. And what a better RB we're working on than this beautiful, beautiful car. So this car is owned by Brad Palmer. He lives up towards Rockhampton, I believe, somewhere up there. He owns a panel shop, Palmer Paint and Panel. It's on the side of the car there. Brad's brought the car down here to just get a few key upgrades to make it just a reliable drifter. Obviously, being where he's located, he's got to travel a fair way to go to the tracks and go drifting, so he wants to make sure that this car is a very reliable setup so he's not wasting his time and money driving all the way to the track. So as you can see, it's already a very well equipped, very well set up car. R33 with an R34 front. Now, as these guys probably have already known, I'm not so much a Japanese or JDM purist, so I don't recognize body kits and stuff straight off the bat like a lot of you people who are really into the JDM scene do. But it looks like some sort of M-spec spoiler that's on steroids. I really do enjoy the look of this car. Obviously, very wide body. Yeah, awesome car. We do have the front bar here as well. It's not on the car at the moment because we have to take it off to do some work. But yeah, RB25 with the RB26 covers, which have really nice baffling. We've got a solid catch can set up there. Really awesome. So it is a forged RB25. I'm yet to talk to Brad about most of the motor, but I do know that it is forged, and so we should be good to make a bit of power. So at this stage, I still have to ask Brad about what cams are in this motor, as well as obviously with the forge, we've got E85 and a Haltech Platinum plug-in for this car. So we've got some good ECU, some good fuel. It's going to be really good. So he's dropped it here. He's got this new Aeroflow high volume sump to fit. Now, as far as RBs go drifting, this is a very, very good modification for insurance. Even if you do have the restrictors put in place in the block, this is still awesome insurance to have an extended sort of sump. So this sump is from Aeroflow. I must admit, until I saw this one, I didn't even know that Aeroflow made one, but I do always recommend the Lewis sumps to people. It's got a nice bit of baffling around the pickup and obviously quite a bit of volume, so that's going to be great. He's also wanting us to fit a rear head drain. Now you see me do a fair few on this channel of these. This one is actually a bit different to the one we normally use. I normally use the Ross unit, for which you pop out the Welsh plug and then tap into the back of the head, 2 M6 threads. This one, I can't believe exactly what it is, I'll let you know in a minute, but it actually uses one of the bosses that's already in the back of the head, so you do not have to drill and tap. So this will be interesting. I've never used one of these before, so that'll be interesting to fit. Now Brad also dropped off a Nitto extended crank collar. Now I'm going to have a chat to him about whether we're actually going to do this or not, because this is actually quite an extensive modification to be done at this point. This is a complete teardown, crank out, send to the machine shop job, because the crank snout actually has to be machined to accept the new collar. So this is not something that can just be sort of thrown in, willy-nilly. It's a lot of work to do, so I'll talk to Brad about whether he actually wants to go through with us doing this. The other option may be, if it doesn't already have it, is just to put some billet oil pump gears in the pump while it's actually apart. It's a lot less work than going through with this modification when the motor's at this stage. But apart from that, we'll get this done, get the motor back in there and give it a retune. So I've been told by Brad that it's making, at the moment it's tuned at 350 wheel horsepower. I'm not sure who by or what the deal is there on E85. It's only got a 3071 turbo on it, so very good, nice responsive turbo for this setup. Awesome turbo for the drift, setup for this car. But we are probably going to run out of turbo before we get to too much more power, I would assume. I assume it's just a Garrett Gen 1. Again, I've got to confirm a few things with Brad. Brad had to drop this off on a weekend, and obviously I wasn't working, so I was busy on the weekend, so I haven't actually had a good chance to have a good chat with Brad about it. But I am excited to do this on the channel. I know a lot of you love the RB content, so a bit of RB content to you guys. So we've got a very nice interior setup in this car. Chase Bay's handbrake, all the Pexi gauges. We've got a Powtune digital dash, which is obviously compatible with the Haltech. These dashes are a really good price point. You would have seen Luke Fink use a few in his cars. I think they're a really, really nice dash for the price. So I haven't had a lot to do with them. I've got this one. I've actually got another car here at the moment that has one in it as well, both of which we are waiting to sort of have a play with and get going. So Brad wants us to have a look at a few sensors in this thing that are not hooked up as of yet, and try and set it up a bit better for him for what he wants to do. Obviously we've got 90 wheel in here as well, GK Tech knob with obviously a, by the looks of that sticker, we've got a cube shift short shifter in this car, and some Recaro reclinables. So Quite a nice setup. So currently our dyno's still out of action. We're still waiting for one of our boards for our CAN hub to get back from Dyno Dynamics in Victoria. Hoping that it will be here a bit later on the week. So the plan of attack at the moment is to pull this motor out, we'll fit the new sump, do the rear head drain, do everything Brad wants us to do, get it back in the car ready for tune, and it'll be onto the dyno as soon as our dyno's back up and running. Alright guys, my apologies. So this head drain is actually a High Octane Racing RB head drain fitting. So as you can see here, these are the two sort of holes that you would normally drill and tap for the Ross or similar brands. This one actually uses this Boss thread, which appears to be already in the head. So very excited to actually give this a go and see how it works. Hopefully it works out pretty well. And together with those, this setup should just be a little bit more reliable for him. Right, so just had a nice sort of look around the engine bay in the car and a little bit of look on the Haltech software. I'm still waiting to hear back from Brad. Obviously, I'm assuming he must be working today, so I haven't been able to get onto him to ask him some deeper questions. But yeah, 3071, it appears to be a 0.84 T3. So quite a small turbo, but it'd be awesome and punchy for the setup on E85, it'd be great. Turbo Smart Hypergate 45, which would be plenty of gate for it. We've got the Haltech O2 with closed loop fuel control. We've got our Mac valve controlling boosts, so it should be a really, really nice setup. As well as a GK Tech fan on a fan hub. So he has also supplied a shroud to fit to the radiator because it doesn't currently have a shroud. But that setup should definitely keep this thing nice and cool. In our experience personally, the old viscous fan with a proper hub that's actually working and a decent fan that draws a decent amount of air and a good shroud that seals well to the radiator is an unbeatable combo for good cooling. Way better than your cheap Chinese thermos. Obviously they have their drawbacks. If you can afford to go to like SPAL thermos or high-end thermos, they're great too. But as far as you know, a cost-effective way to keep your car cool on track, this is awesome, this setup. So he's going about this thing right. Everything's looking right to build this thing into a really nice, reliable setup. I've just asked him about the cam specs, what's done to the oil pump, and whether he wants us to fit billet oil pump gears, which would just help that little bit extra. It serves the same purpose as the crank collar as far as being insurance for the oil pump. However, fitting billet oil pump gears at this stage is way less labor than it is to fit the crank collar. So we'll see what he says about that. But as soon as we get another car, we've got this car on the hoist, we've got to get off. As soon as that's off the hoist, we'll get this over on the hoist and pull this motor out. So guys, yesterday we actually had a power outage, so we couldn't actually do anything on the hoist or anything like that, so we continued on with the Mustang yesterday. But out here this morning, ready to get tearing into this R33. I did get onto Brad last night. He has confirmed that these are stock cams, and with my advice, he has sort of decided that we will put billet oil pump gears in this oil pump while it's apart. So the motor was built by a friend of his. It's pretty recently finished, so the last thing I want to be doing is pulling the crank out to do that crank collar. It's going to be heaps of labor for him. It's very hard for me to do it cheap and do it properly, and then all of a sudden I've touched the bottom end, which I didn't build. So would like to leave that alone, save him some money, and billet oil pump gears should serve pretty much the same purpose. So first thing I'm going to do is pull off his beautiful RB26 covers, because the last thing I want to be doing is damaging them. They are absolutely spectacularly beautiful, that red. So we'll pull them off and get this motor out, and we'll pull the pump off and just confirm what pump it is first, and then we'll order some parts and get this thing happening. So guys, first look underneath this thing. Very, very well set up car. Brad's done a really good job of setting this car up. We've got all GK Tech, most everything under here, full GK Tech, adjustable lower control arms. We've actually got the GK Tech offset rack spacers, which pretty much offset your rack end forward, so it's almost like relocating your rack forward. It serves the same purpose where it helps with your over zeroing. It's also got GK Tech knuckles, so HSD coilovers, adjustable sway bar. You know, this car is very well set up. So do some of these modifications, make sure this thing's going to stay reliable for Brad, and make sure it's going to keep cool, keep good oil pressure, and you should have a bulk load of fun in this thing. It's going to be awesome. So. Righto, so we've got the motor out of the hole. Relatively easy. Bit of a breath of fresh air working on an RB after some of the things we've been working on lately. It's so nice and simple and easy. But we've got a really nice twin plate extreme clutch in this thing. I did notice it's only got stock flywheel bolts. So I'll have a chat to Brad and see what sort of budget he's working in with, and see if he wants to chuck some AMP flywheel bolts in it. Just a little bit of more assurance. Or insurance, I should say. Also, I'll have a chat to him about whether his budget would allow for a new sort of real decent harmonic balancer. This is just a stock one, it's fairly old. It's a fair bit like sort of cracked, and as you sort of know, the harmonic balancer on these things does help a great deal with pretty much their issue with harmonics, which is why they have a history or record of doing oil pumps. So. Also having a good look at this turbo, it's definitely a 3071, so that's definitely what's going to hold us up with this thing. But apart from that, it's all gravy. So we'll get it in the engine room, pull the sump off, have a good look at what's actually inside the motor. Brad said it's forged, so it'd be good to have actually a good look at what we're working with. But either way, we don't have enough turbo to really hurt this thing anyway. So also the Mercury stickers on this thing are just because of a boatish theme. That's why they're there. Anyway guys, I say that it'll limit us because it will limit all our horsepower figure, but make no mistake, this combo on E85 with that little turbo will be absolutely amazing power curve. It's going to be really nice and punchy, it's going to be awesome for drifting. So anyway, first things first, here in the engine room now where it's nice and cool. That's awesome. I like spending time in the engine room. I spend not as much time in here as I would like. So first things first, I'm going to pull the timing gear off, flip this over, pull the sump off, and we'll get the oil pump off and just confirm exactly what oil pump it is, so we know exactly what gears we need to order, because I would like to order them today so that hopefully they will be here by Friday. Today is Wednesday, so if they can be here by Friday, that'll be awesome. And then after that, we'll have a look at fitting our head drain, and from there we're sort of at the mercy of waiting for parts from then on. So we'll get stuck into what we can do here now. Alright, so we've got our sump off. We have definitely got forged rods and pistons here, ARP rod bolts. We've also got ARP main studs, so this thing has been built, which is awesome. So should be a bulletproof little combo, this thing. A little bit of gunk on the pickup, nothing outrageous that I would be concerned about, especially on a fresh build. So the other thing we'll do is when we take this filter off, we will actually cut it open and have a good look inside the filter. Brad's also supplied some solid engine mounts to go back on this thing when it goes back in the car. So yeah, a few bits and bobs, little modifications, just a few things to make it a little bit better. So anyway, now I'll pull this oil pump off, and we can get the backing plate off the oil pump and have a good look in there, see what we're dealing with. Righto guys, oil pump's off. I forgot to mention, but we do have ARP head studs as well. The main studs are actually 2000 series. Oh no, the rod bolts are 2000 series as well, ARP. So the thing's pretty bombed. Like the oil pump is an N1 oil pump, so it has got an N1 pump in it. We're just taking the backing plate off at the moment to check what the gears are, make sure the gears aren't already billet. And obviously this is what I wanted to check, so I knew which gears to order, because it would have felt real silly if I'd already ordered ones for a stock pump. Quick and easy way to tell whether it's N1 or stock, this bolt here in no man's land in the middle. The stock pumps only have bolts around the perimeter. Oh yeah, screws, bolts, whatever you want to call them. The N1 pump has this one here on the backing plate. That's the easy way to tell them straight away apart. So obviously, yeah, this thing's been built really, you know, with everything in mind. This is particularly why I didn't really want to go pulling the crank out. This is not my engine, I didn't build it. You know, someone else has put a lot of care into building this motor, obviously, so I don't want to go pulling the crank out and disturbing any of that stuff. Just some billet pump gears in this pump, and a decent, like a nice new good quality harmonic balancer, and this thing should definitely be reliable enough. So obviously we have a whole lot of motor here that's good for some pretty good power. Like I said, we're going to be held up by this turbo, but you know, this combo should be absolutely bulletproof. It'll be great. Righto, so with the backing plate off the pump, we've confirmed that they are just stock steel N1 gears, so they aren't billet gears, which would make sense. I'd say that whoever built the motor probably just bought the N1 pump, whacked it on, which is, you know, the right thing to do. It's just that at this stage he's a little bit worried about just that reliability of you know, the RB25 common issues. So even though it is an M1 pump, they are still prone to the same failure. They fail in the same way. I've been through it a few times before, and it's just the fact that the key drives on this crank collar, which actually drive the inner gear for the oil pump, don't engage enough of the gear. So they give the gear enough room to sort of just walk a little bit, particularly high RPM. They get some harmonic and stuff like that, like a bit of harmonics, and the crank sort of walks, and these gears just start to walk, and they sort of just eat away at each other, or you know, until they sort of fail. And that's pretty much goodbye to your whole setup. So let's have a look at this head drain. So we've got this high octane head drain. Like I said, it's a little bit different to the Ross ones that I'm used to using, for which obviously I've been through this a few times. So we punch out this Welsh plug, which is the oil galley Welsh plug for the head. This one is water. You don't punch out this one, not the one you use. So this one is oil. You punch that out. Normally with the Ross one, you'd line it up and drill and tap 2 holes to bolt the head drain onto it. So this fitting, like I said, actually is designed in such a way that it uses this boss that's already in the head. That's what it screws to. So it screws to the back of the head like so. So as I stated, I've never used one of these, so this is going to be interesting. So first thing I'll do is get a screwdriver and a hammer and knock this Welsh plug out. To do that, I won't film it because it's too awkward to try and film what I do. But I might be able to. But just get a flat blade screwdriver and a hammer and just a sharp tap on the bottom. And then you use a pair of multis usually just to pull the Welsh plug out. You don't have to be super worried about where it's going to go, particularly in an engine that's got head studs like this, because you've got a head stud there which is blocking the oil return in the back of the head there. So not only that, but a Welsh plug has no way it can fit down there. So you don't have to be too worried about where it's going. And so if you want to know how to do like a Ross one or something, just search on my channel. I've been through it before. I won't go into it again. Bottom screwdriver, nice sharp tap. So pop the Welsh plug up like that after you've knocked it in, just so you can get at it with some multis. Just grab the multis, grab it on the lip, and just use it to fold it out like so. That's your Welsh plug popped out of the head. Now often if you are good enough with the hammer and give it a sharp enough tap with a decent screwdriver, usually you can sort of punch it on an angle and then just pull it out. Otherwise you have what I just did just then, where it punched the Welsh plug all the way in. That screwdriver I use is probably just a bit big, bit wide, but yeah, usually just get them out. Just a little bit of thinners on a rag. Clean that up real nice. Make sure it's nice and clean. And then I just give the fitting a quick clean as well on the surface there. So with the Ross ones that I normally use, they actually have a sealing O-ring. This one does not. It simply seals the same way a Welsh plug would. So the instructions say to use a sealant. The sealant I'm going to use is called Stag. It's a jointing paste. It's exactly how I would seal any freeze plugs or Welsh plugs in a motor to start with. So perfect use for this application. And the instructions for this one say to apply your sealant and just knock it into the Welsh plug hole with a rubber mallet. So I'm going to give that a try. Again, like I said, I've not used one of these before, so we'll see how it goes on and see how it goes. So guys, I just went to test fit the fitting, and it's actually very, very tight. It must be a bit of an interference fit. So there you have, guys, the High Octane rear head drain for RB twin cams, for which you actually don't need to drill and tap any holes. So for an application like this, where you're putting on the head drain while the motor is together and the head is on the block, it is a much less risky situation than doing something to the likes of Ross. Personally, I'd feel more comfortable with something like Ross's one if you had the head already off the motor and you could, drill your holes and not have to worry about swarf. For those of you who are considering the Ross with the head on the motor, I've done them before. You can watch videos on how I go about ensuring that you don't get, or trying to minimize the risk of getting swarf into the bottom end. Obviously, doing it with the head on the block, there is always there is always a element of risk doing it that way. So this is, much more comfortable doing it with the head on the block with this sort of setup. So it seems to be quite a good unit, and I'm quite impressed with it. So another RB head drain. Tap, and they bolt in each side, and that is what locks them into the back of the head, and that's why they can use a bit of a smaller fitting with a rubber ring seal. But obviously with these ones bolting this far down, they must not have that sort of luxury, and that is actually solid as. So very good, not a bad fit. Alright, so with the fitting in, they also give you this nice little cantilevered bolt, which actually just bolts into that boss. A little bit of thread lock, 243 nut lock, and just bolt him on and off you go. So there you have, guys, the High Octane rear head drain for RB twin cams, for which you actually don't need to drill and tap any holes. So for an application like this, where you're putting on the head drain while the motor is together and the head is on the block, it is a much less risky situation than doing something to the likes of Ross. Personally, I'd feel more comfortable with something like Ross's one if you had the head already off the motor and you could, drill your holes and not have to worry about swarf. For those of you who are considering the Ross with the head on the motor, I've done them before. You can watch videos on how I go about ensuring that you don't get, or trying to minimize the risk of getting swarf into the bottom end. Obviously, doing it with the head on the block, there is always a element of risk doing it that way. So this is, much more comfortable doing it with the head on the block with this sort of setup. So it seems to be quite a good unit, and I'm quite impressed with it. So another RB head drain. Alright guys, that's about all we're going to be doing today that's worthy of filming. So good to make some progress on this thing. Yeah, very impressed with this motor. A lot of good gear in it. It really would be an awesome thing to put that extended collar on that crank, but I just am not comfortable pulling down someone else's bottom end to do it, without completely pulling it down and rebuilding it myself, knowing that it's going to be perfect. So there's always that element of risk doing that. You probably could flip it over and just pull the rod caps, pull the main caps or girdle, and then pull the crank out and get it done. But then you just have to bolt it all back in and just torque it up the spec, and you're trusting someone else's work. So I'm just not too comfortable with it. So the billet pump gears, like I said, they're going to serve a very similar purpose, and that they are insurance for that pump, that it's not going to fail. So I'll talk to Brad about what his budget is. If he can afford to get a decent harmonic balancer on this thing as well, that's also going to help a great deal. So between billet pump gears, a decent harmonic balancer, and everything else that's going to be done to this motor, I believe that it's going to be reliable as hell. Like I said, having that extended crank collar is really, really nice, but at the cost of the labor and the risk to do it, I just don't think it's worth doing. So that's pretty much where we're at. We've got our head drain on. At this stage tomorrow, after I talk to Brad, we'll order some billet pump gears, a new gasket for the oil pump. We've got our new sump to go on. We've just got to make our line from our drain to our sump, put it all back together, then we can get it back in the car and get it on the rollers, and yeah, see what sort of power we can crank out of it. Hoping that we can maybe creep up towards that 380 sort of horsepower mark. Again though, very small turbo. So, not too fussed on the absolute power figure. I do believe that this thing's going to be an awesomely powerful little punchy motor. It's going to be great for drifting. So that's where we're at. Hope you've enjoyed this little bit of RV content, and I hope you're tuned back in for to see how much power we're going to make next for the next episode, which will hopefully be very soon. So do me a favour and smash that like button, smash the like I called your mama fat, and smash subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace out, catch you later guys.